Welcome in, everyone. Ready to dive into something kind of mind-boggling today.
Always up for a challenge. What are we tackling today?
Well, we're asking a question that's equal parts intriguing and honestly kind of stumping me. Can you really, put a number on happiness?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a question, that's been around forever. I mean, we're so used to measuring, economic stuff, right?
Yeah.
GDP, those stock tickers.
Exactly. But those numbers only tell, one tiny part of the story. It's like trying to get the whole picture of a rainbow by looking at one tiny speck of red.
You got it. So how do you get a more, well-rounded view of well-being then?
That is the million-dollar question, right? And that's where things get really interesting, because we're diving into Bhutan's Gross National Happiness Index, or GNH for short.
Okay, I've heard of this. It's like they just tossed out the old rule book on how to measure a country's success.
Right. Totally different vibe. They're basically saying, hold my butter tea, we're doing things our way. And instead of just chasing bigger numbers, they're like, hold on, a thriving society. That's not just about wealth. It's about well-being, too.
Music to my ears. So walk us through this. What makes Bhutan's approach so different?
Well, think of it this way. If GDP is like a solo instrument, GNH is a whole orchestra. It looks at 9 different areas. 9. We're talking psychological well-being, health, education.
Okay, I'm seeing the holistic angle here. It's not just about being rich, it's about having a good quality of life, period. I like it.
Exactly. It's about how people spend their time, their cultural diversity, how's the government doing, what about community life, the environment. It's a lot.
So it's pretty comprehensive then. How do they actually measure all that?
They don't mess around.
Yeah.
We're talking 33 specific indicators.
33. Wow, okay, I'm impressed. But how do you even start to quantify something like, I don't know, trust in government? Or even just sleep quality?
Right, that's what I thought. But it's actually pretty elegant how they do it. They survey their citizens, regularly,
Yeah.
ask them about all these different aspects of well-being.
Okay, so they're getting the pulse of the nation on a whole bunch of levels. What do they do with all that data, though?
So, based on their answers, everyone gets put into one of 4 happiness categories.
Yeah.
You got your deeply happy, your extensively happy,
I'm guessing there's a not-so-happy category in there somewhere, too.
you know it, narrowly happy, and, yeah, sometimes unhappy.
Wow, so it's like they're taking the emotional temperature of the entire country.
That's a great way to put it. This isn't just some idea in a book. They're really doing this. So Bhutan's onto something pretty revolutionary with this whole GNH thing. But I'm guessing they're not the only ones, right? I mean, other countries have got to be trying to measure happiness too, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Bhutan might be leading the charge in a way, but there's a whole global movement going on trying to move beyond these traditional, economic indicators.
Right, like ditching the whole more money, more problems mindset. But, okay, so what are some of these other ways countries are, putting happiness on the map?
Well, you've got your big one, the World Happiness Report. That one gets a lot of buzz.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
And then you've got the OECD, they've got their Better Life Index, and then there's the Social Progress Index. Lots of options out there.
It's like everyone's trying to bake the perfect happiness cake, but they've all got their own recipe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's adding different ingredients to the mix.
Okay, so with so many different happiness indexes and reports and whatnot, what makes Bhutan's GNH stand out? What makes it different?
That's the question, right? See, a lot of these other indexes, they're mostly about just measuring and ranking. Trying to say, okay, this country over here, they're happier than that country.
Yeah, it's all about the bragging rights.
Right. But Bhutan, their GNH is different because it's actually tied to policy. They're actually using it to make changes.
So it's not just about, feeling good. They want to actually do good.
Exactly. They're using these measurements to try and actually improve their citizens' lives, make things better for the people. It's refreshing.
I like their style.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's got that going for it. Anything else?
Another difference is how straightforward it is. Having those 4 categories, deeply happy, all that makes it really easy for people to wrap their heads around.
Keeps it simple.
Yeah, and that's really important if you want the public on board, because then they can actually get involved and support those policy changes.
Right. It's like, if you don't know how to measure it, how are you supposed to make it better? But even with something like this, with all these different measurements, I mean, happiness is such a tricky thing to pin down, right?
Totally. It's the million-dollar question.
Can one single thing really capture it all?
It's something that researchers are always wrestling with. But you know who's been paying attention? The UN. They've actually recognized how valuable Bhutan's GNH is, and they're encouraging other countries to take notes.
Wow, the UN's given them a thumbs up. They must be doing something right.
Right. Now, that's not to say that this is some one-size-fits-all solution, but it definitely shows that people are starting to realize that maybe, just maybe,
That there's more to a country's success than just, like, how much money they're making.
you got it.
Okay, I'm with you there. But this brings up something else that's been on my mind. This whole idea of measuring happiness across different cultures. Like, can you really compare, you know?
Now you're getting into it. It's like, how do you compare apples and oranges, right?
Because we've all seen those world happiness rankings and stuff.
Yeah.
But how much can those numbers really tell us? Like, if you don't understand the culture, those numbers don't really mean much, do they?
That is a huge can of worms.
It's like, those travel shows where they go to a country and everyone's like hanging out, drinking tea, chilling.
Yeah.
And the host is all like, wow, everyone here is so serious. Are they unhappy? But maybe they're just like living their lives,
Exactly. It's like what
Yeah.
makes one culture happy might not even register for another. So yeah, trying to compare those things, it gets messy.
Right. It's not just about like different words for happiness. It's a whole different way of seeing the world, isn't it?
Absolutely. Like researchers talk about these things called cultural dimensions. And one of the biggest ones is this idea of like individualism versus collectivism.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, tell me more about that, because I feel like that plays into this whole happiness thing big time.
Right. So individualistic cultures, they're all about like you do you, go after your dreams, stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, classic American dream kind of stuff.
Exactly. But collectivist cultures, it's more about the group. Harmony, interdependence. You're happy when the group is happy.
Okay, so how does that like play out in real life? Give me an example.
So imagine someone from a more collectivist culture. They might find more happiness, like genuine happiness, from supporting their family, maybe even sacrificing their own personal goals for the good of the group.
Whereas someone from a more individualistic culture might be like, nope, got to follow my bliss.
Right. And neither one is right or wrong. They're just different.
So it's like that saying, you do you, but on a global scale.
Exactly. And that's why it's so tough to measure this stuff. Because something that might seem like a sign of happiness in one culture
Could mean something totally different in another.
Exactly. And this actually plays into how people respond to surveys, too. Like, some cultures might be more reserved in how they answer questions about their happiness.
Interesting. So like they might actually be happy, but they don't want to come across as like bragging or anything.
Right. Or maybe their culture emphasizes humility or not standing out, so they might downplay their happiness, even if they're feeling great.
Wow, that's wild. So you could have a country full of people who are totally content, but like based on a survey, they come across as kind of grumpy.
It's totally possible. And that's why you can't just take these global happiness rankings at face value. There's so much more going on beneath the surface.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. Really makes you think twice about those happiest country lists.
For sure.
But I think the big takeaway here, for me at least, is that happiness isn't one size fits all. It's about finding what works for you in your own life, within your own culture.
100%.
It's been awesome picking your brain about all this.
This was fun. Thanks for having me.
And to all you listeners out there, keep this in mind. Forget the rankings. What matters most is your happiness, your well-being. So go figure out what makes you happy and go do it. That's all for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.